right, let's bring you this discussion now. South African artistic practices have a long and diverse history, but many of these are still largely unengaged. The Culture of Blues Festival curates spaces that foster dialogue between art forms and current affairs. The second installment of this festival, which is supported by the Arts and Culture Department, creates such spaces to ventilate these issues. In fact, today at the Joburg Theatre, musicians Tumi Mogorosi is among those who are going to take to the stage. Tumi joins us now via our video link for a sense of what we can expect. And before then, Tumi, it's great to have you on the program, by the way. Thanks for your time. Before we speak about what we can expect, let's talk broadly about what you're hoping people who engage with the Culture of Blues Festival take away from it, especially in a context where many will tell you South Africa has among the best musicians in the world.
Hello?
Tumi, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Lovely.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think this moment with the Culture Blues Festivals also represents, I think, like you've been saying, an ongoing sort of like struggle within the sort of like arts, particularly black arts frame, with the sort of like socio-political landscapes. And I think, like our sort of like elders, the artists and musicians of this time are sort of like also paying sort of like cognizance to the sort of like political landscape that they find themselves working in, and using sort of like the cultural practices and cultural tools to sort of like be a part of the larger societal sort of like articulations of the ills that we're experiencing, particularly as black citizens in South Africa. And also trying to think through the name, the Culture Blues Festival. I think the blues also really plays an important part in us thinking about the black blues post the apartheid and how far we've come now. Yeah.
You know, as journalists, we're often told that we form part of those who write the first draft of history. The same can be said about musicians.
Yeah, I think journalists also function, or people who use the pen or words also function within the larger cultural framework that we find ourselves practicing for the liberation of our people, whether we want to use the sonic or words to actually sort of like relay or think through some struggling themes and thoughts.
Yeah. How do you reckon we are doing that today, though? I mean, it's easy to identify, for instance, activism that was taking place in music during apartheid, as you've mentioned. I mean, that kind of stands out. In fact, there's almost a texture to the type of music that comes from that era. Today, do you reckon that kind of activism still takes place in music? And if so, what are its characteristics? What is it characterized by?
No, I think definitely. I think the link was unbroken or is unbroken. I think the only sort of like difference with this time is that I think the media, unfortunately, is also like not paying so much significance to sort of like liberatory sort of like sentiment around the sonic because of where we are as a country. And I think the sort of pre-South African democracy, I think culture had a responsibility, or sort of like was put on the pedestal to be able to articulate certain things from the ground. And I mean, I think with the sort of like the democratic turn, I think culture has taken a different sort of like orientation around what it's preoccupied with. And sort of like liberation messages are not at the fore of what the cultural sort of like spectrum is being availed to the people. So I think these spaces have always been happening where people have been wrestling with societal problems within their music, within their visual practice, within their written practices, but then it doesn't gain as much traction as the other stories, I think. So I mean, I think this is a way that we can critique and sort of like work with the media as it stands now.
Fascinating. Let me bring in Malcolm Gianni, who's another musician who's part of this initiative. Malcolm joins us via our telephone line. And Malcolm, good morning to you. Hopefully you can hear us. Tumi and I are just ventilating the evolution, if you like, of activism within music as we document history, so to speak. And part of what Tumi has pointed out now is that the activism is still ongoing. In fact, it never stopped, but it appears that it's gaining less traction today as it did during the apartheid era, for instance, when liberation narratives featured prominently. Let me get your thoughts on that. Why do you reckon that there isn't as much traction now as there was in the past, especially when you think about activism and music?
Oh, okay, what a question. Well, Tumi is right, Well, we should have just listened to that. Well, I think it's the times that have changed. When our grandmothers and fathers were growing back then, doing this work, or there was hunger for it to, for this work, which is art, to do more than it should be doing, to entertain. They've used it for various reasons. So I think it was the time. It was hard, and art was at its forefront. So they used that art. So the world was also watching. So the difference now is that after our democracy, some of the things just were left as if we have arrived, or as it we far from it.
Right. And, you're still there. Apologies for that. I'd lost you for a moment. And I guess help us, Malcolm, place where the Culture of Blues Festival then fits in. Because I imagine part of what this is aiming to do, I beg your pardon, is bridge that gap, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is that a question?
Yeah, I'm saying help us better understand, connect the dots for us, to put it differently.
Yeah.
How is this festival helping to bridge that kind of disconnect, for lack of a better term?
Oh, okay. Well, now, since we are the new generation from that history, so we are still hurt by a lot of things, right? As an artist, I see a lot of things around my people, around my communities, we have, So this festival does bridge the gap so that we close it to our people,
Right. Tumi, let me bring you back into the discussion. Today, I imagine you'll be taking to the stage. Approach here is very important because of, I guess, the myriad of issues that we're actually engaging with. What can we expect from what you're going to do at the Joburg Theatre?
Well, today I'm going to be a part of a group called Sanctum Sanctorium, which is a duo project that I did with Gavi Mutuba 5 years ago when we had a residency in Switzerland. And tonight we're going to be producing 5 compositions each, original compositions each, that deal with the framework around the loss of natality, which could be seen as the loss of home or the hoping for home. And I mean, as it was written, beautifully written by our younger sister Pulani, that sort of like framework can be speaking to the larger black community or the larger black family, that we are not yet home, but we are still striving and struggling to get there. And as young people, to still be saying that, I think the world needs to take notice that certain things that were taken for granted are still looming very large and are haunting us to be reckoned with. So this musical offering is something that helps us think through the incompleteness of the Freedom Project and the incompleteness of us arriving. So we will be home, but we are not yet home. But Sanctum Sanctorium is about that.
Beautiful. And I guess what underpins that is, what is home? What makes home home? But I guess we'll ventilate that at a different time. For now, we're going to have to fold it there. Really appreciate your time. Tumi Mogorosi and Malcolm Jani, both musicians who are part of the Culture of Blues Festival in one way or the other. In fact, they'll both be performing at the Joburg Theatre today.